Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Nick Matar, and I am the Associate Director of Marketing and Communications at the Graduate School here at Wayne State University. Today is the final Professional Development Series event of the semester, where we are going to talk about stress management here as you prepare for finals, projects, whatever you need to turn in here over the last 10 days or so of the winter semester. Last fall, we hosted a similar session in December as we geared up for finals and the winter break at that point. And we had a lot of really good responses, really good engagement from our attendees. So today we've brought back our speaker from last semester as well. That is Jennifer Bohanon. She's going to be our speaker, and she'll be starting us off in just a few moments. But before I would go ahead and turn it over to her, I just want to share a couple of quick notes. This is the last session for professional development that we'll be doing of the school year. We will be back in the fall. We'll be back with a whole new slate of events starting in September for the 23-24 academic year. If you have any questions, concerns, comments, or any new ideas for the professional development series, I'll be sending out a quick little survey / form to everybody who's attended any of our PDS events over the past academic year. We did that last year, and that actually gave rise to several of the events that we hosted this year. And I will say, I do think it's a really good mechanism to help continuously create new and engaging events for our graduate student community, as well as the wider Wayne State community at large. But with that being said, I do want to get on to the main event here today, talking about stress management. This is the time of year when students can really use these principles the most. And when we've done this in the past, it seems like it's a great topic of conversation, especially with graduate students who, some of you may be on the cusp of finishing your terminal degree. Some of you may be at the end of your first graduate school semester, where you have a lot of work and a certain level of academic work that you have never, experienced before. So whatever the reason is, or whatever the issue is, being able to manage kind of your mental state and your well-being, I should say, really does kind of come down to some good techniques and concepts and ideas. And I know Jennifer will talk about some resources and a lot of other things today in this session. So with that, I will turn it over to Jennifer.
Great, thank you so much. And I am just going to share my screen. I really appreciate being here. My name is Jennifer Bohanon, and I go by she, her pronouns. And I am a university counselor with CAPS, Counseling and Psychological Services. I have been with CAPS for over 5 years now. And I work with a lot of students. I consult with faculty. And one thing I can assure you is that stress is a part of every experience and presentation and nearly every discussion that I have with individuals. It is ever present. And managing stress is really a practice. So we'll be talking about different ways of looking at stress, ways of thinking about stress, and then just some ideas about coping as well. So I hope this can be interactive. So if you have thoughts, if there are things that resonate with you, if you have questions, if you have experiences, please use your reactions buttons. I think I may be thinking of Teams. It's reactions on Zoom as well. And, put your hand up just so we're not talking over one another, but feel free to interrupt anything that I have going on. You don't need to wait till the end because I would rather address your concerns and questions rather than go through my agenda and then maybe not have time to address what's on your mind. But so it was funny because I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about this morning, and I was really I really had some intense emotions when I looked out and saw the weather this morning after having just such a beautiful weekend. And the weather was kind of jarring for me this morning, and certainly stressful, I think. And I was thinking about all of the things that I did in my day to day up to this point. And I was thinking about all of the roles and responsibilities that I had. So as a spouse, as a mother, as a daughter, as a counselor, as a friend, there are so many pulls on our energy. There's so many pulls on our emotional resources throughout the day. And I don't know what your day has been like, but I want us to take just a minute to get grounded and centered in this space, in this moment. So what I want us to start with is a breathing technique that's generally referred to as 4-square breathing. Any breathing techniques, there are probably many variations of it. There are variations of the 4-square breathing technique, but basically it's that you breathe in for 4 seconds or 4 counts, you hold it for 4, you breathe out for 4, and you hold that for 4. When you inhale, the benefits really have been shown to be maximized when you inhale through the nose and you exhale through the mouth, kind of a pursed lip mouth. So not necessarily wide open, but definitely through the mouth rather than exhaling through the nose. So let's just practice this, and this video will help guide us.
We're going to start by using a relaxation technique called square breathing. We'll begin by moving to a space where there is little noise or distraction. If possible, find a seat to sit in comfortably. Now that we are comfortable, we'll start by taking in a long, deep breath, inhaling for 4 seconds. Count them out as you're breathing. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now hold your breath in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we exhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now let's hold our breath out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that we've completed the cycle, let's begin again. Breathe in for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. And hold out for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. You can repeat this process as many times as you need. Hopefully you'll notice that your heart rate has decreased and the anxiety has subsided.
Now that we've gotten centered and grounded to this space, I want us to reflect on how we think about stress. So on kind of a 4-point scale, where 0 is strongly disagree and 4 is strongly agree, I'm going to present 8 statements to you. And you just rate them based on whether you agree or disagree using the scale that's on the slide, 0 to 4. So here we go. The effects of stress are negative and should be avoided. Experiencing stress facilitates my learning and growth. Experiencing stress depletes my health and vitality. Experiencing stress enhances my performance and productivity. Experiencing stress inhibits my learning and growth. Experiencing stress improves my health and vitality. Experiencing stress debilitates my performance and productivity. The effects of stress are positive and should be utilized. So I want you to kind of reflect on your responses and see what your perspective is on stress. Do you think that it is facilitative of learning and growth and performance and productivity? Or do you tend to see it as kind of a barrier to learning and growth and productivity, and that it is more debilitating? Oftentimes, when I talk with individuals about stress, stress is kind of this bad thing that should be avoided. A lot of times, students in particular talk about stress and overwhelm as if they are one and the same. And it can be true, that can be true, but it is not necessarily true. And this is based on the work of Dr. Aaliyah Crum, who is one of the principal investigators at Stanford University's Mind and Body Lab. She's done a lot of work with stress. And so I want to kind of present her work in her own words. She says it better than I could. So watch this video. It's a longer video, and I think it's about 4 minutes or so. So here we go.
Our minds aren't passive observers, simply perceiving reality as it is. Our minds actually change reality. In other words, the reality that we will experience tomorrow is in part a product of the mindsets we hold today. Our mindsets come from many places. Our mindsets about stress come from our upbringing and the words of encouragement we may or may not.
Oh. Sorry.
Aren't passive observers, simply perceiving reality as it is. Our minds actually change reality. In other words, the reality that we will experience tomorrow is in part a product of the mindsets we hold today. Our mindsets come from many places. Our mindsets about stress come from our upbringing and the words of encouragement we may or may not have heard. Our mindsets about what it means to be fit and beautiful are a product of the cultures that we live in. Every day, marketing and advertising shapes our mindsets about what is good, worthy, or exciting to eat. And influential doctors and health scientists have an uncanny authority to craft how healthy we expect ourselves to be. I study mindsets like these and how they impact our physical health. Thousands of clinical trials have shown that simply taking a sugar pill under the impression that it's a real medication can reduce not just our anxiety and pain, but lower our blood pressure, boost our immune system. Placebos work not just by making us say we feel better, but by activating a whole host of specific neurobiological effects. Holding the mindset that a pill or medication will relieve your anxiety, for example, activates the body's parasympathetic nervous system. The power, of course, is not in the sugar. The power comes from the social contexts that shape our mindsets in ways that activate our body's natural healing abilities. And the dirty secret of all clinical trials is that once the trial is said and done, the placebo effect remains, not as something to be subtracted or ignored, not as some magical or mysterious response to a sugar pill, but the psychological and social foundation, the support system on which the total effect of any drug or therapy is placed. These principles apply to health behaviors as well. Hotel room attendants, for example, get a substantial amount of physical activity throughout their day of work, but typically don't think of their work as good exercise. What we found in our research is that a simple shift in mindset, from the mindset that their work is just work, to the mindset that their work is good exercise, produces physiological changes in the body. After just 4 weeks of adopting the mindset that their work is good exercise, hotel room attendants lost weight and lowered their blood pressure by 10 points. What this means is that objective health benefits, things like a healthy heart and a healthy weight, depend not just on what we're doing, but what we think about what we do. The same is true for food. In this study, we gave people the exact same milkshake, but with 2 very different labels. What we found is that when people thought they were in the mindset that the shake was indulgent and caloric, their body's hunger hormone ghrelin dropped at a 3-fold rate, speeding up their metabolism and leaving them feeling physiologically satiated. So how does this work? How do mindsets influence our health? Take these 2 mindsets about stress, for example. The truth is that both of these mindsets are possible, but the rub is that the mindsets we choose to hold influence the outcomes that will result. Mindsets change what we pay attention to. Mindsets change what we're motivated to do. Mindsets change how we feel and expect to feel. And mindsets change what our bodies are prepared to do. Through cascading effects on these psychological, behavioral, and physiological mechanisms, mindsets can create the reality that's implied. In other words, having the mindset that stress is enhancing, ironically, is what makes those enhancing effects more likely. So as influential leaders and decision makers, it's essential to recognize that mindsets are not peripheral, but central to health and behavior. If we truly want to tackle the diseases and crises of our time, we need to more effectively acknowledge and leverage the power of mindset. Thank you.
I'm going to stop sharing now, and I just want us to reflect on, what were your thoughts about what Dr. Crum shared, her perspective? If you have thoughts about the 4-square breathing exercise, I just want to kind of pause for a moment. I've been talking for a while, so what's happening for you all out there?
I have to agree with Dr. Crum said, because it do make some logical sense to try to breathe and look. I learned a lot of that in yoga also. So the same practice you were talking about, we talking about that in my yoga class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you really bring up a good point about yoga. That is an excellent practice as well. Yoga has been demonstrated to decrease the heart rate and things of that nature. So yoga is an excellent practice for managing the effects of challenges.
Hi, I just wanted to make a comment too.
Yeah.
Regarding how it's all about our perception of stress. Because I've noticed that when I approach it from a positive perspective, then my outcome is positive. Because it acts as a vehicle to help me get where I need to be. Because sometimes we need to be challenged within ourselves. And then so that gives me that extra push, if you will, to help me do what I need to do in a timely manner and done well. So I find when stress is in my life, yes, it may have some negative connotations, but the overall outcome, because of my perception, a perspective on it, is that it's positive. The outcome is positive.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that.
I have a question in relation to that, stress. I've heard that, some people saying there's good stress, which, as you were listing those, for me, some I said to myself, oh, that must be when, one has good stress, where you see and stuff. And which then says that there's bad stress, right? So what I want to know is that can then bad stress actually help you to get things done, or help you to, can you turn bad stress into a good stress? Probably that's how I can phrase it. And I'm asking this in relation to what Dr. Crum said. I really liked her talk, that, once the workers started to view their everyday work as exercise, then they actually started seeing the benefits. So I guess, my question also is doublefold, that they were doing the exercise, whether they were they were aware that is exercising rather than work. Was that then impacting their bodies? Or they started seeing the results themselves, that, oh, actually I'm losing weight, or actually, when I do this is good for my health. When they started viewing it positively, that's when they started seeing the results. I don't know if I'm making sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your question, and I think I understood it. But if I didn't, certainly please clarify for me. But so the idea of good stress and bad stress, right? So there is definitely a perspective that I think is evolving. And so I think Dr. Crum's work has been instrumental in trying to get us to move away from this idea of having such a dichotomy with good stress and bad stress. So the idea behind the good stress was, they called it eustress back in the day. So things like getting a new job, starting school, starting graduate school, moving, giving birth, having a child. These are positive things, right? These are typically good things that people welcome into their lives, but nevertheless, they are still stressful because it is symbolic of transition. So the idea was those things are good stress as compared to things that are more associated with adversity. So things like getting into a car accident, having a test, those things we associate with some kind of adversity. So that those things were considered, bad stress, whereas the good stress is not adversity, but they are highly anticipated events that cause a change, a significant change in a person's life. And so the idea of the change was what was stressful. So again, Dr. Crum's work kind of moves us away from categorizing events in our lives as good or bad, and really focuses on our perception of the event, our expectancies, and how our expectancies can impact our physiological and our psychological responses. So the workers, they were not losing weight prior to, and I call it kind of priming, they were primed to expect that there were certain benefits that were coming out of their exercise or their work. So kind of reframing what they were doing from work to exercise allowed them to experience the benefits of what they were doing. And so that is kind of what we're saying in terms of our cognitions can greatly influence and impact our physiological responses in addition to our psychological responses. And I'll get more into the physiology of it a little bit later. I'm definitely no expertise on physiology, but I will share what I understand of it. But it is definitely about perspective. And again, the idea of categorizing and labeling stress as good or bad is evolving. We're evolving in our understanding of that. Okay. I'm gonna start sharing my screen again. Okay, so speaking, that was the perfect, I think, segue to how I think about stress and how I'd like to anchor us around this idea of stress today, that we can view stress as the experience of encountering or anticipating adversity or challenge in one's goal-related efforts. So it really is about the anticipation of adversity that typically causes the stress. So we know we have a task to accomplish. Let's say we want to get a paper written, or we want to finish our thesis or a dissertation, or whatever it is. And we anticipate that there is going to be some kind of challenge along the way. And that is where the stress happens. So I talk to a lot of students that say, it really wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be, right? So their anticipation of adversity caused a lot of stress that wasn't based in reality. They didn't encounter what they anticipated encountering. And I think that's where stress is often associated with negativity or with overwhelm because of this anticipatory response. And when we anticipate that we're going to encounter something negative, then we activate our nervous system to believing that there is a fire somewhere that needs to be put out, or there is a bear that's coming that we need to run from, when that is, in fact, often not the case. Now, there are some situations that are a threat, and we need to prepare for that threat. But we know that speaking in front of a crowd, getting on the stage, delivering a speech, there is usually minimal threat in that, but somewhere our body anticipates some kind of adversity or challenge. And often it's not even that, it's our bodies anticipating judgment or evaluation. And we have somehow encountered evaluation and judgment in the past, and we're bringing that into this experience, and it's changing the experience for us. So one of the challenges, and I didn't ask this, but I want you to think about, what are some of the challenges of Dr. Crum's perspective? Because I absolutely believe that mindset can impact our experience of stress. I also, obviously, am, I identify as an African-American female. So my experience in the world may be a little different than Dr. Crum's, because I don't think she identifies in that way. And so as much as I want to have a positive mindset when I hear a police car pull up behind me or see sirens, my body does not respond in that way. I have a hard time having the mindset of, oh, the police are just coming to enforce safety in the community, because what they may think is safe may be different than what I think is safe. And it's because of either past experience or my exposure to media that shows me otherwise. So I do think there are situations where mindset may not be as simple as what Dr. Crum has presented. I really like her work. I really think it's very valuable, particularly in the academic setting, where safety is not as much of an issue. But I do struggle with taking it into some situations of lived experiences of identity-based stress. And so that may not be limited to race, but it may be limited to sexual orientation or religious preferences or political affiliations or whatever you have that may have a safety component to it. So I do want us to be mindful that there may be limitations that weren't expressed in the 4 or 5 minute video there was. But I do encourage you to, really explore her work if you're more interested in it. Again, if you have comments, questions, please share. You can either put it in chat, you can unmute, whatever you want to do there. Looking more into this stress mindset. So the beginning of kind of thinking and talking about stress, and this goes back to the idea of, is there good stress? Is there bad stress? Hans Selye was an endocrinologist, and he defined stress as a non-specific response of the body to any demand. So again, that idea of big changes put demands on the body. And so that's what stress is. Our body responds to the demand. His experience and expertise was in physics. And so he was accustomed to studying force and the resistance to counter the force. So his perspective was that this demand, this force on your body, means that stress is bad for you. And he did a lot of research and work around the relationship between stress and disease. And so a lot of the literature, again, it's evolving, but a lot of past literature was that, the greater the stress, the more likely you are going to have disease and all of these kind of negative outcomes as a result of stress. He kind of coined the fight-flight reaction, and the identified hormone at the time was cortisol. And so it was seen that, you know, when your body is under these demands, under this stress, you see this heightened amount of cortisol, which is really bad for you. And so this is where we get the idea that stress is really bad. And so Dr. Crum comes along in her work, and other researchers as well, but she has done a lot, and says, well, let's look at this in a different way, that our body is under demand, but our bodies rise to the challenge. That even though we experience this rise in cortisol, there are other hormones that are at work in our bodies that counter the effects of cortisol. So there is DHEA, which is believed to be a super hormone. And so it can counter the effects of cortisol. So it may not be as bad as we think. Let's really look at this a lot more. And so in her research, they have proven, and you know, allow me to go back a bit, the 8 items that you responded to, and that was in no way scientific. And so we're not going to draw any conclusions about, you know, what your perspectives may be and, you know, all of that. But they have been able to demonstrate using that measurement, because they have, you know, it's been validated and things of that nature. They've been able to demonstrate that stress can have benefits on performance and productivity, on health and vitality, on well-being. There is a such thing as stress-related growth, just as we think there is, you know, post-traumatic growth. There is stress-related growth. There is stress-related, the PTSD response can be negative, but there's also post-traumatic growth that can happen. And so how do we transform stress? How can we use stress to enhance our outcomes? So one of the steps is to acknowledge your stress, you know, acknowledge that, yeah, you know, I'm in this situation and it is, you know, challenging, it's different, but embrace it. You know, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It is, my body is preparing me to meet this demand, or to meet the challenge of this task. It's reminding ourselves that we stress about things that we care about. So what is the underlying value? If I'm feeling stress in this moment, what is this about? Get curious about it instead of judgmental about it. We are so, we typically want to put a label on things quickly because it helps us categorize and compartmentalize. And so the idea is to kind of slow down and elongate the process to really be curious and really explore what our bodies may be trying to communicate to us about what's important and about what shifts we may need to make, whether it's mindset or other practices, so that we can accomplish what we want to accomplish. In, I think, the video, Dr. Crum talked about things that influence our mindset, our upbringings, how our parents talked about stress, how we saw our parents respond to stress. One of the things that I ask individuals are, how was conflict handled in your family? You know, how was stress handled in your family? Did anyone ever talk about stress? Or was it just, you know, someone comes through the door after work and it's, I am so stressed. Or, you know, if there was a lot of yelling and screaming, then that was associated with, well, this person is stressed, so we better clear the way because you know what happens when this person is stressed. I talked about the media's role in, some of my stress responses to different events, movies, podcasts, social media. We are influenced by our environments, and it's important to recognize what role has that had in stress and then making a conscious choice about it. I believe that laws, kind of looking at the larger society, laws are either protective of our resilience, or, they may facilitate certain responses. So what role does the larger society play also in our stress responses? And I think it's important for us to critically think about that. So as individuals, what kind of protective factors and coping practices? So yes, we start with mindset, but we need to also go further in layering our ability to respond to the demands and the challenges that are placed on us. Dr. Rita Walker has a book about kind of Black mental health, and she talks about, she uses the analogy of protective factors as using sunscreen. And she says that, with sunscreen, we have to reapply. It says like after 2 hours, it's not as protective. And so we reapply. And when I talk about stress with people and kind of coping practices, they say, yeah, I used to do that. Well, how long has it been since you've done that? Oh, it's been a while. Or yeah, I do that in the morning. But think about all the things we do throughout the day. And if you're in environments where you're encountering microaggressions or invalidations in some way, you need to reapply. And so reapplying coping strategies may mean, 10 minutes of a brisk walk at lunchtime, or just a quick 4-square breathing technique throughout the day, or doing some progressive muscle relaxation. And progressive muscle relaxation is when you tighten muscles and you relax the muscles, or doing a quick body scan, saying, where in my body am I stressed? I tend to hold my stress in my shoulders, so I walk around with my shoulders elevated. So just a reminder to relax your shoulders. And that gives me that quick adjustment. And what I'm doing is I am reapplying my coping strategies or my protective factors throughout the day. So grounding techniques, nutrition is really important. Making sure that we are providing fuel for our bodies. Physical exercise, journaling can be helpful to just kind of get it up and out, because we can't always talk at length with people, which is helpful, but just journaling. Our religious and our spiritual practices can be important. And I think that really ties into mindset also, because our spiritual beliefs or our religious beliefs can serve as kind of mantras, or to refocus us and keep us going, and any kind of helpful self-talk. Our families and our communities, that gives us a sense of belonging and acceptance, hopefully, and a sense of familiarity. A lot of times we're beginning to, especially as graduate students, we're beginning to go into spaces that are unfamiliar to us. And so just some sense of familiarity is really important. Cultural traditions are really important to, again, keep us connected, and just a release when we can do that. So all of those practices are important. I keep using the word practices because so often I will, recommend a certain practice like meditation or deep breathing, and the person says it didn't work. And I say, it didn't work. Why was that? It was hard. I can't sit for that long. And so if your body is not accustomed to being at rest, if your mind is not accustomed to being still or quieted, it may take a while to get accustomed to that or to get comfortable with that. And so I always encourage people, it's a practice. Practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but it makes progress. So it is a practice. For graduate students in particular, manage expectations. There will always be more work to do than time to do it. And so it's okay if you're not on top of everything all the time. It's okay if you don't get to some things sometimes. The amount of work often increases as you move up the academic ladder. So again, adjust your expectations. Things that may have worked in the past, you may have to readjust. You may have to increase your SPF, your protective factor, right? Because there are different levels of SPF. There's like 30 and then 15, and then there's the 75 when you know you're gonna really be exposed to a lot of unhealthy rays. Prioritizing urgent tasks at the risk of, your health and self-care and success does not necessarily lead to balance. I hear all the time, I don't have time to eat. I feel like I don't have time to eat. I can't sleep. I'm only getting 4 hours of sleep. You need that restorative rest. Your body needs to rest. And so it's important that we engage in self-preservation. Create accountability structures. Maybe you have an accountability partner that every week you can kind of check in with one another to say, hey, how did it go? To share tips and recommendations. And then learn to say no. It's okay to say no. You can put a period behind no. And, incorporate different strategies. Sometimes one strategy may not be as effective as another strategy, and it's okay to experiment over time. There are a number of YouTube videos that you can use. There are meditation apps. Headspace is on Netflix, or it was at one particular time. I think it's still there. There are group-centered apps like for BIPOC individuals, and the Metro Detroit area has mindfulness meditation groups. Of course, at CAPS, we are here to help and support. We typically have groups. It's kind of late in the semester, so a lot of our groups are not still open. But, next fall, we will certainly start again with our groups. We have a program called Let's Talk, where if you go on our website, you can just click on a Zoom link at the time indicated and the day indicated, and you can meet with a licensed counselor. You don't have to be a CAPS client. You don't have to have an appointment. You can just show up and kind of process through things. And that is available to you. And to initiate services with CAPS, you just go on our website and get the process started there. I also wanted to, for those of you who may not know, that there is a free class offered that is usually taught by Lori Santos through Yale University, The Science of Well-Being. It's also been referred to as the Yale Happiness class, Psychology and the Good Life. But this class, fills up pretty fast. It is free. It's being offered free. So you can just kind of Google The Science of Well-Being. They are also offering kind of a 6-week course for teens, The Science of Well-Being for Teens. And this course, they say in the description that you will build more productive habits and increase happiness. So that is also a resource for you. So at this point, with the remaining time we have left, I'm going to stop sharing and just invite you to ask questions, offer comments, whatever has resonated with you today.
I have a comment I'd like to share. It was really helpful to hear a little bit about how anticipating stress or something, adversity creates that stress level. And I know for myself, when I have the next day and I know I have like meeting in the morning, a few things going on in the afternoon, something I got to go do after work that's important, I feel uneasy and don't feel good. And I never was able to put my finger on it, but that's actually now that I think about it, is just stress and thinking about that the next day. And just like you said, after the fact, when the day's over, I'm usually 9 out of 10 times like, man, it was not bad at all. That was actually pretty easy of a day. But when you anticipate it, it just seems so much worse. So it's helpful to acknowledge that in the moment. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. One of the strategies that can help with that is mindfulness. And mindfulness is just staying in the here and the now and not allowing yourself to get too far ahead. And so I encourage people, a lot of times if I'm getting dressed in the morning, I'm thinking about the meetings I have and what I need to do for the rest of the day. And I encourage people, just focus on what's happening in the moment. And usually that involves the senses. If you involve the senses, you can kind of stay present. So if I'm brushing my teeth, for example, what does this toothpaste taste like? What is the sensation of my toothbrush on my teeth? Which stays present. It keeps my mind engaged in the here and the now, rather than me thinking about the meeting I'm going to have later on and getting maybe anxious and worked up about that. Or if I'm washing my face, reminding myself that I am deserving of, fresh and clean skin, or I am worthy of health and wellness. So really staying present in that moment. But thank you, I appreciate that.
That's great, thank you.
I wanted to share one other thing, piggybacking on what was just stated. I agree with the mindfulness thing because I'm doing it so much with CBT. And one of the most important things when we approach as stress is building, stop and ask yourself, okay, if what I'm afraid of doesn't occur, what's the worst can happen? Then when I take the time to think about it, is it going to be as devastating as I think it could be? Or do I have another day that could come up and I have another opportunity to maybe do it better? Or maybe that isn't what I should be doing anyways. I'm just speaking of the point that here and now, all that is relative. And I really appreciate your sharing that with us.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. That's absolutely true. That's a great question to ask. What is the worst that can happen? And if the worst does happen, can I survive it? Is this really the worst thing that I have ever encountered in my life? But am I able to survive? And most of us can survive even what we imagine to be the worst. So thank you. Very important point. Other comments, questions, reflections? You all have been great. Okay, Nick, I think that may be it.
Hi, I have a question. It's a generic question. I'm an international student at Wayne State University, and I did take a course back in this winter semester, which I felt was. I just like to tell you my example. So, just took a course this semester, and I thought I could study this course, but it was a very tough course. And in the midterm, I realized that this is not my cup of tea. And I started getting scared. I was so stressed on my head, because if I withdraw, because the withdrawal date has also been passed, and I don't know what to do. But right now I'm doing that course, yeah, it is being tough on me. But at that moment, I had a lot of stress built up on me. Like, of course, the university is going to charge me for it. I'm not going to get anything back. I did a big mistake by taking this course. I just want to ask, like this kind of stress, it was like too much on me. Just want to ask, like, your point of view, how to handle that kind of stress if it comes to me again, like in the future.
Yeah, if I'm understanding you correctly, it is the stress of realizing that the course just wasn't a good fit for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good situation where sometimes acceptance that this is not facilitative of my growth and development. I mean, you're taking classes because you want to grow and develop, or you have an interest. And it's very much a reality that you take a course and you realize, oh, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I thought I had this interest and I don't. And so the reality, dealing with the reality that this is not a good fit for me, and what is in my best interest at this point? Do I stay in this course? It could be a relationship. It could be, insert whatever situation it is. And do I stay in it, or do I remove myself from the situation? Now, sometimes it's a class that you have to take. You don't have an option. It's not that you chose this course. It's just that, it's a part of the requirement. It's a required course. And then it's about what can I do to manage the content of the course? What can I do to make it relevant? How can I relate? Are there people in the class that I can rely on to kind of help understand the material, or make it fun, studying together, or just developing coping strategies in terms of managing the class if it is a requirement.
Yeah, okay. I do understand what you're telling. Thank you. So yeah. It's like, you need to, I have another question, like, is time management equivalent to stress management?
Time management can be a component of stress management, because it's about, managing your time effectively so that you are not feeling the physiological or psychological impacts of whatever the situation is. So it's an approach.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. You've really been helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that will wrap things up. I had to move my audio over to my phone because my microphone apparently died on me, but I think otherwise, we're good to go. Jennifer, thank you so much for your presentation today. And we had some really great participation and engagements from our attendees. So thank you again. And that will wrap up this semester, this academic year's professional development series. And we look forward to seeing you all in the fall. Be on the lookout for a survey on all the events over the past 8 months or so. Thanks to all of our speakers, and especially, Jennifer, who was here with us this week to wrap things up in often the most tense time of the year. So thanks again, everybody, and have a good rest of the day.